Club at 22, the Rangers podcast, is supported by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping with code Club at 22. Your balls will thank you. Do not enter unless you are ready to put yourself second, and that should be the only one and only time second is good enough for you. Welcome to Walter Smith, the manager, here on Club at 22, the Rangers podcast. Putting a massive timestamp on this. This show was due to be recorded last week, however, it was postponed due to the departure of Steven Gerrard. So we're here now to give a little respite from the current manager situation at Ibrox by discussing Walter Smith. The word legend gets put about a lot nowadays. However, in terms of Rangers, there has never been a more fitting term for Walter Smith. We are here to celebrate Sir Walter's managerial career at Rangers, and we'll discuss the highs, the lows, the laughs and the tears of a man who has not only left a lasting impact on our club, but on our life as supporters. So I am your host, Scott Tammy, and I'm joined by the other three lads. Ali, how are you?
Not too bad. A couple of bevies last night, so slightly tender today, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, mate. I appreciate you doing it, mate, dragging yourself off the couch. Scotia, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, I'm okay. Looking forward to doing this. I was disappointed that we weren't able to discuss it on Thursday, but it gave me a bit more time to kind of reflect on some of the things that we're going to discuss. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
And Ryan Haymarsh, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Very fitting intro from you, Scott. Absolutely loved that, those words. I think we've been quite a unsettled support, but I think we'll definitely be united with this pod, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Not going to blow my own trumpet or anything, but this is the most work I've ever put into a podcast in my life, and I'd made it quite clear to people when we announced that we were going to do this that I wanted to get this right. I think it's important to get it right. So we're going to have some laughs with it, there's no doubt about it, for all the memories that Walter's brought us, but for a lot of laughs as well. And there's been lows, there's been all over the place. So we're going to run through different stages of his career. The guys have picked different parts, different moments, different titles to discuss. There'll be a few surprises flew in across the rest of this podcast. So settle in and enjoy this as we do celebrate Walter Smith. So Walter Smith came to Rangers in 1986 as number 2 to Souness before taking over as interim manager in April 1991. He was made permanent in May of the same year after Rangers clinched their 4th league title in 5 years. Walter then led Rangers to 6 more consecutive league titles, which included a treble in 92-93, and in the same season took the team to the brink of the Champions League final after going 10 games without defeat in that campaign, which was part of a 44 matches unbeaten in all competitions. After leading Rangers to 9 in a row, he left the club in 98 to go to Everton. He had a brief spell at Manchester United as Sir Alex Ferguson's assistant before taking over the Scotland national job, where he improved the nation's world rankings by 70 places. You're welcome, Scotia. He returned to Rangers in January 2007 after the failed tenure of Paul Le Guen. Smith led Rangers to a UEFA Cup final in Manchester in 2008, the club's first European final in 36 years. He won the club's 52nd, 53rd and 54th title before handing the reins over to assistant Ali McCoist at the end of the 2011 league campaign. His total tally of honours is remarkable. 10 league titles, 5 Scottish Cups, 6 League Cups and a runner-up in the UEFA Cup. What I feel like weighs his honours is the memories that he's provided us, as much as well as setting the standards of the club that they are still pretty much in place to this day. Smith will be the most successful manager I will see in my lifetime. I have pretty much zero doubt of that, and I will be forever grateful that I was there to see this man lead our club to success after success. So, Ali, before we get into our talking points, just a brief overview, if you will, of Walter Smith.
He's always going to be the gaffer to me, isn't he? Even if we do announce Giovanni Van Bronckhorst this week, he'll always be the gaffer to me for the rest of my life. Walter Smith, I've been fortunate enough to the age, well, we're all around about the same age, to grow up during 9 in a row, which was I was brought up on Rangers just winning all the time, winning league titles, and he was the man that brought all that to us. Obviously came from Helensburgh, which was down my neck of the woods. Obviously Scotia still stays down there now, so there was a tie there. A lot of the players stayed down in Helensburgh at that time. I've got a wee story later on for one of my sort of favourite players that kind of ties into all that. But yeah, great manager. And then he came back in the second spell, obviously after the Le Guen experiment went wrong, and again came back. Well, we won 2 in a row. Nado was the t-shirt, and worked wonders. And he won his 3 titles, and he's a legend, an absolute legend. And I'm sure Rangers will do something in terms of naming a stand or a statue for him, because he's the best manager in my lifetime, to be honest. He really is.
Yeah. Scotia, I know obviously there's when I come to an overview, there's a high risk of us repeating everything, but it is important that you have your own say, so don't worry about too much if you're kind of repeating what Ali says, if that makes sense, because we pretty much feel the same way about Walter.
Yeah, no, we do. I think I've said previously in previous pods, it's the second spell that really cements me for him as manager of Rangers. And then obviously, as you kind of said in your intro there at the start, he'd done really well with Scotland, and obviously that's pretty important to me as well.
I thought you would like that bit, mate, to be honest. That's why I put it in.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, he took over from Bertie Vogts, and I put some pride back in Scotland again, which he done in Rangers often enough as well. Yeah, the word legend gets bandied about maybe too easily, but Walter Smith's certainly up there. I was looking through, there's 8 people, right? I'm going to list 8 names: Moses McNeil, Peter McNeil, William McBeath, Peter Campbell, Tom Valance, Bill Struth, Sandy Jardine, and John Gregg. And Walter Smith is up there with them. In fact, he's probably, personally for me, he's right at the top of that. And I don't think I can pay him any higher praise than that.
That's superb, mate. Absolutely excellent. And you are quite right now, Ian. He's well and truly deserved to be involved in names from the history of this great club. Ryan, over to you now, mate.
He's a huge part of my youth. Walter Smith, I think I said when we did the pod about him when he passed, that I always found it strange when people were upset about celebrities dying. I was certainly upset when Walter passed, and I would just be echoing what Scotia and Ali and yourself have said, so I don't want to dilute it anymore, but I absolutely loved Alan McCoy's tribute to him on TalkSport, which was minutes after the announcement. He was a father figure to people. He was a great friend, a husband, grandfather, father, a great man, and you can tell that in interviews he's done and just moments he's had over that we've had wee snippets into. Probably not as much as we would like, but you can tell he was just such a great guy away from football as well. And more than a legend, an absolute class act.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was, it was emotional seeing all the different tributes come in for him, but it was also, it made me feel proud. And I know that's probably me put myself in a bit of a pedestal, if you like, but it made me feel proud that people were talking about this guy that had such an effect on my life as well. And it was coming from all over the place, people that not even really fully involved in football, people that just knew the guy, people that have just had interactions with the guy, interviewers, journalists, everybody just been like, the guy he was different class. There's none like him, and there'll probably never be another one like him. And how McCoy's kept that together, mate, for that interview at that and TalkSport, I've got no idea how he done that. I mean, that's I mean, me and Ali, when we did ours, we just just until the very end of that, managed to hold it together. Ali had a massive gasp for breath towards the end, and then I just completely fell apart because I knew that he was very close as well, and it was a real emotional one. The tribute that we done, I felt that we had to do because I was genuinely felt like I'd lost a family member. It felt something. It hit me in a way that probably no celebrity or anything, somebody I've not personally known, has hit me like. And I was actually talking to a lady I work with. I'll know who that is, and she was like, she mentioned that she'd watched it, and she's got no interest in football. And she's like, "Oh, I've seen your tribute to Walter." And he was like, "That was the way I was when Diana died." And I was like, "God." That I'm not saying like Walter Smith is important as Diana, but that was the feeling that I got that people must have had when Diana died. It must have been around something like that, because a guy that you didn't know personally had such this effect on your life. But yeah, I mean, the tributes were absolutely superb, and hopefully others did a wee bit of justice as well. As I say, it was the toughest one. I did the most work for this one, but that podcast was the toughest one that I have ever done. So we'll move on to the talking points, lads, that we're going to speak about. And we can all drafted, put our ideas into the hat for this one, and we've come up with the first one being your first ever memory of Walter Smith. So, Scotia, do you want to go first, mate?
I honestly really struggled with this one because Walter Smith was an ever-present for me growing up. He was just always at Rangers. So I really did struggle, and I wasn't sure if I was picking what would be my first memory or kind of like manufactured kind of memories of it. But I think the first one that springs to mind has to be when we won the title against Aberdeen at Ibrox in 1991. He'd obviously, as soon as he'd just left, in about the 16th or 17th of April 1991, and then leaves us a wee bit in the lurch, similar to what's going on at the moment, a wee bit. We've got 4 games left to play, and you know we've not secured the title as such. We still need to go out and actually win the title. So Walter Smith comes in charge for those last 4 games, wins the first 2 against St Mirren and Dundee United. Then we get beat away to Motherwell, and we go into the last game of the season against Aberdeen for a kind of title decider. You know, it was 2 points a game back in those days, and we go in and yeah, we absolutely win. Haley runs away with the show, scoring us to secure us the title. And you know, Aberdeen were our big rivals at that point. You know, Celtic weren't really anywhere in the picture, so it was a very, very good day for him personally. Obviously, having to take it over. And one of the things that kind of struck out for me is there was the picture of him, Chris Woods, and Nigel Spackman that kind of really burned into my memory, because when I was looking through stuff, researching this, I was like, oh, I remember that. And then there's also a wee point where I think it's Spackman tosses him the trophy when they're out doing celebrations, and again, that is something that's just stuck in my mind. Whether it's from, I was only 4 at the time, so I probably don't really remember it. Maybe just watching old videos back in through the 90s. I think that's the one that stands out for me as my first memory of Walter.
Ali, I've just realised, mate, that you've picked the same one. This is why I shouldn't plan podcasts, everybody. I have just noticed, mate. I was like, oh, hang on, that's the same game. So, yes, this is why I shouldn't plan pods, man, honestly. So, yes, Ali, I might as well just pass it to you, mate. My bad, lads. That is what I'd planned to do, everybody, is that I wasn't going to let the other lads know what everybody had picked. So it kind of brought back memories of this one. But this one is on me. I have overlooked this one. So sorry, Pion. That's not a good start, to be honest. Well, Ali, let's go to you, mate.
Me and Scotia actually discussed last night. We actually cheated a wee bit and actually asked each other what we'd picked in the different topics, and realised we'd picked the same one. But I thought, well, maybe Carney's going to throw a curveball in it and link the two of us together for it, but obviously not. But I'll let you off with it anyway, though, Carney. But no, that is Scotia's pretty much summed it up very well. But it's difficult. I found it difficult as well, Scotia, because like Scotia says, he was there all through our childhood. And I mean, we were quite young back then. I mean, 91 when he took over for Souness, I was 6 years of age, so I was just going to games at that point. But you're very, very young at that point to try and grab a moment. So possibly cheating a wee bit now. You've got YouTube, etc., to go back and look at all these moments. But that 2-0 game, the same as Scotia, to me was one that the chips were down at. Rangers were down to the bare bones that game as well. I remember Walter Smith doing a few interviews saying that he had different players in all sorts of positions, which Walter liked to do further down his career in terms of moving players in different positions. But it was a bandaged up team, and Mark Hateley with 2 trademark bullet headers to beat Aberdeen in a shoot-off was incredible. And it's the exact same as Scotia. My image is him lifting that trophy. I'm not sure if he had the cardigan on at that point. He used to have the cardigan on, but that's my kind of moment as well. So I don't want to go too much on it because Scotia covered it quite well there, and I'll pass the baton on to Ryan for his memory.
I've made a mess of that one, to be completely honest. I've overlooked it. I really have. It's the way I've took the notes down, and as soon as Scotia started talking about that game, I was like, oh no, that's the same as Ali's. Look, it's some game. I mean, it really is. I'm too young. I'm a few years younger than you, lad, so I don't remember that apart from watching it back on different videos. So I don't remember that game specifically. But I mean, I've seen that video. I don't know how many times of Hateley scoring the goals, and I think that's just before Mark Hateley started to lose his hair. He still had the full whole head of hair was still going on for Hateley. So the following year he starts to lose it. But yeah. Great choices though, and yeah, apologies. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. I'm now panicking and trying to scurry through my notes to make sure this hasn't happened again. Ryan, I'll come to you for your choice, mate. What was your first memory of Walter?
It's the exact same game. No, I'm only joking. No, mine's is completely different, as you know. So it was 1995. It was my first Rangers game. Me and my dad went to. Rangers had already secured the title. I'm a bit like Scotia in terms of I've probably got earlier memories of Smith, but whether they're nostalgic or whatever, I think this is my first real memory of Walter Smith, seeing him physically for the first time. We're playing Motherwell at home. The league is already done. I think it's about April time, 1995. Motherwell at home, and Motherwell were second that year. They had a pretty decent team with Dougie Arnott and Tommy Coyne up front, and me and my dad are sitting in the Broomloan Weir, and I'm pretty sure I'm sitting with a Polaroid, not a Polaroid, you know the wee disposable cameras you used to get?
Yeah.
I'm sitting with one of them and I'm taking pictures of the governing pictures of the stands and all excited because this is my first time at Ibrox and whatever. And we go down 1-0 to the Dougie Arnott that scored. And Motherwell are battering us like they're all over us. We're obviously switching off. We've won the league, and then there's like a murmur. Obviously, Walter Smith liked to watch games up in the director's box from that angle, and then there's a murmur. Like I remember sitting there and I could hear everybody like just there's something happening. Like that kind of feeling when Celtic score or there's like a kind of murmur in the stadium. You're like, what's happening? And down comes Walter. He walks through the tunnel with this like proper angry walk, swaggering right down the tunnel, and I'm just like, who the fuck is that? And I'm looking at my dad, and this guy's like, that's right, Walter, fucking kick their asses. My dad goes, that's Walter down, and I'm like, Walter? And I'm like, he's like, that's Walter Smith down. He must have been up in the stand watching this. And I'm like, right. And I'm looking at my dad's like, this is fucking crazy. Like, and he's straight up at the dugout, and he's rolling at people, and he's pulling arching hooks in, and he's pointing at people, blah, blah, blah. And he stands and watches it for 5 minutes, then goes back up to the director's box. But, I mean, we did get beat 2-0 that day. The league was already over, but just his presence was just, the whole stadium knew, there's Walter come down the tunnel, he's going to kick some balls and kick their asses. But, so I'll always remember that. That's my first memory of him.
That's a good one. And I know exactly what game you're talking about, mate. How many times have we seen Walter emerge from the dugout, mate, emerge from the tunnel, mate, when he doesn't look very happy? That's happened plenty of times in his time at Ibrox. My first one, again, it's more from the telly. It's more from the TV. I was used to watch all the highlights on the TV and sit with my dad, and they would always interview Walter after it, and I would be like, Dad, who's that? That's Walter Smith's son. That's the Rangers manager. And it just kind of became a guy you knew. As soon as you seen his face, it was like, oh, Walter, he's the guy who manages Rangers. And I was so young at the time, obviously when I first started getting associated or getting into Rangers and thinking about Rangers, like, I never ever thought about there being another manager. I never ever thought about, like, I presumed that whoever was the manager of Celtic at the time was always a manager of Celtic. I hadn't got into my head the concept that managers move on, etc. So I just always remember thinking, it's just the Rangers manager, and never really could think twice about it. My first actual sighting of Walter was at a friendly game. That was my first game that I went to. I think Rangers played at Arsenal at Ibrox, and he spent most of the game, I think, he spent in the actual dugout. I just remember looking and watching. I was fascinated by how the dugout was, and it was the middle of summer as well. And I just remember always watching them and just seeing the kind of the grey bits around the side of the hair of Walter and thinking that's the manager, that's the guy that I see on the TV all the time. So that's really the only one really for me. But a good one to start. Mess up from me, yes, I know. Apologies. So we'll move on to our favourite 9 in a row. So a favourite title of 9 in a row. Basically, so obviously there was a wee bit of clashing with this one, lads. I had to come back to you a few times to say, can I pick that? Somebody else picked that. But we got there in the end. So, Scotia, I'm actually going to start with yours again. So this is Scotia's pick.
The final whistle goes. Rangers have won the match and they've won the league championship for the 5th consecutive time. The manager, Walter Smith, walks around the track. He's entitled to feel thoroughly satisfied and contented. The smile tells the story, and these Rangers fans begin their celebration in earnest.
The manager led the celebrations in earnest in the dressing room, and the magnitude of the achievement of 5 in a row was not lost on him.
That puts us among the Rangers' great teams, I think the last time I was looking through was a way back, so the boys are celebrating the start, so I hope we can make it 6 and eventually get up to the 9.
You know, they never cease to amaze at the resilience. Have fought back in games, have been down in games, have won easily in games. It's been tremendous performance. Thanks very much.
So, Scotia, you have picked 92-93, or most commonly known as 5 in a row. So why have you picked this, mate?
Yeah, well, I probably need to caveat this by the fact that the choice that I would have went for was picked by the other guys. So I've got more memories of those ones, as it were. So I'm kind of, again, perhaps going off a wee bit of videos and things for this one and just watching it at telly, because I hadn't been to Ibrox by that point. But I think it was important that we picked this one because it's probably one of Walter Smith's best, not just the league title, the season as a whole. I mean, we won the treble that year. Europe was absolutely amazing that year. I think that's a big one that why it stands out for me. It's like how good we were in Europe. Getting into the first ever Champions League. We're one of those wee, the wee ball that it shows. We're one of those wee stars. That's one of them is Rangers, if people didn't know that, which is really good. And you kind of almost robbed out of that final against Milan with the match fixing stuff that went on with Marseille. But yeah, I mean, the league itself, I think we won by about 9 points, but I think it was a fairly tidy league for us. Played really well. McCoist get his second golden boot in Europe. 2 seasons in a row he's done that. I think he's the first ever Scottish player to do it since probably Dalglish maybe, or someone like that. And it's certainly the first player in Scotland to do it, which was absolutely remarkable. Yeah, and as I say, I've not got a huge amount of memories, so I'm maybe doing it a wee bit of injustice myself, because I would have been 5-6 over the course of that season. So it was when I was just starting to get into football, really properly into football. It was around about that kind of period. So perhaps doing it a wee bit of disservice, but I thought it was important that it was one of the seasons of the 9 in a row title that we discussed, because it was so good. Definitely. It's a very important title, that one. People always speak about the 92-93 team. Do you know what I mean? They always speak about them. And that game, the clip I just showed, Rangers beat Airdrieonians 1-0 away to secure that. Airdrie? Airdrie? When were Airdrie in the Premier League? It's crazy when you think of that. Honestly, that's absolutely mad. When I was looking it up, I was like, no way, I can't believe that. Ali, you get any memories? Carney,
carry on, mate.
I might actually just steal what Ali's about to say here. Probably Gary McSwiggan's header against Marseille, and me and Ali
bastard.
went to that club.
I asked the question as well.
Yeah, we went to that club and beside the Modern Art Gallery.
29.
And Yeah, 29, is that it? Yeah, and Gary McSwiggan was there. And I think, was Durant there as well? Durant, I think, had just
Durant
won a
was there.
title with Dumbarton or something, or they'd just get promotion. So they're all a bit worse for wear, and we were chatting away to them about it. That was quite a good night.
What did you
Sorry,
ask,
Ali.
Well, I said to Gary McSwiggan, I was like, oh, that goal you scored against Marseille, the header was it was Marseille? It was a 2 each game. I was like, that was what a goal that was. And Ian Durant must have been listening to the story, but it wasn't as good as mine against Marseille. It was just brilliant the way he came in and said it. Outstanding.
That's brilliant. Ali, you get anything to add on Scotia's choice?
95 nice. Not really. It's kind of stuck right in the middle of the 9 in a row, to be honest. So I thought Scotia covered it quite well, to be honest. But I wouldn't say much in the 95, 96.
I remember the video for it. It was like a light blue video cover, wasn't it? Like a shiny silver bit down. I used to have all of them VHSs when I was younger. Again, my mum's chucked all that stuff out as well as all my old tops. I'll never forgive her for this because I kept everything. Nothing ever get through. So I don't know where they all are now. In landfill, probably somewhere. But I just remember the cover of the box for that. But again, I probably still was a wee bit too young for that one. Ryan, anything to add on that?
No, that was just the start of it for me as well. I just remember the Rangers news coming through every week. Obviously, you didn't have Sky.
Rangers news.
The fact the Rangers news coming through every single week and sitting absorbing every single word and picture. And Dad, can I please put that poster up on the wall? No, I've not read it yet, kind of thing. And it was just a start of it. And as I said, it's part of our childhood. Walter Smith lifting trophies, and yeah, for me that was the start of it. The 5 in a row. So it was iconic. It's a good pick for Scotia.
Yeah, mine just probably 6 in a row that I properly started to really take note of what Rangers was all about, because I'm still a wee bit younger than you, not by very much, but it's just that difference when you're younger of that year or so that kind of makes a difference. But yeah, Scotia, absolutely cracking choice. Ali, we'll move on to yours. This is Ali's pick.
There goes the final whistle. Rangers are champions for the 8th consecutive season. They're champions for the 9th time in 10 years. And they're champions for the 46th time in their history. And there's a man who scored all 3 goals. And there's a man who's led them to 5 of these titles in his own right. A stunning performance by Paul Gascoigne. And the celebrations really get underway. Well, there's the manager with his captain. John Brown, who's seen it all as well. He's been here during all of these 8 years. Celebrates, but no one celebrates more than Paul Gascoigne. And Ian Durant will be delighted to have been out there for those closing seconds. So there's absolute bedlam here now. Archie Knox takes part in the celebrations. Walter Smith couldn't be a prouder man. And Alan McLaren, who played such a terrific role in that match, both defensively and in attack. They all celebrate.
So Ali has picked title number 8 in the 9 in a row run, 8 in a row at Ibrox, or Gaza's 8 in a row, as most people remember it. But now you're talking. Now I remember these games. Now you're talking. Ali, why have you picked 8 in a row?
Again, Christ, was an ambulance in the background there. Right? It takes Scotia away. No, it's similar to yourself. As I said earlier on, a lot of Walter Smith early titles. We were quite young of age. This one is quite vivid. Obviously, Gascoigne Gascoigne was signed this season by Walter Smith, but we'll obviously come on to players later in the discussion. But I mean, some of the signings he brought in that year was. Gascoigne came in 4.3 million, big bucks to be honest back then. He was on a 15 grand a week back then, which was a high wage. Oleg Salenko was brought in, if you remember him, and he was actually shipped off in a swap deal halfway through the season for Peter Van Vossen, and we all know how that turned out. So, there you go. So that wasn't great, those deals there at all. Gordon Petrucci was another one that was signed, who I thought was not a bad defender for us. Theo Snelders for Aberdeen. and I used to call him Bo Peep, Eric Bo Anderson. Come in as well. So and another name which has been linked at the moment in Rangers was Derek McInnes was also signed, who was a good player for Rangers, to be fair to him, brought in. But no, this season to me, because we were getting close to the 9, so we're very, very close. And obviously brought Gascoigne in to kind of freshen that team up, because obviously you had Laudrup as well, but Gascoigne just added that bit of extra in that team, and he slotted in well with those lads, because I mean we discussed the team last season in terms of Rangers, in terms of how they're like a family, they're all together. This Rangers team, the 9-year-old team, were a family. They'd go out together, drink together, meals, holidays together. They were always with each other, but he fitted in well, Gascoigne. But it was kind of similar to the game where we talked about Hateley scoring the 2 goals against Aberdeen. Rangers had to win this game against Aberdeen. Celtic were breathing down our necks. In fact, Celtic that season only lost 1 game, and we won the title, which is quite surprising when you put it in that terms. They actually drew 11 games, which killed them, and that was Tommy Burns Celtic, and obviously Rangers broke their hearts all the time. And Walter Smith, who is good friends with Tommy Burns, he broke his heart in terms of this team, especially Andy Goran. But we only beat Celtic once that season, a 2-0 at Ibrox. The rest of the games were all draws. But in Europe, to be honest, was a disaster, which during that 9-in-a-row spell wasn't great in terms of Rangers. We got humped off Juventus 4-1, 4-0. Didn't actually win a game in the group stages, so that wasn't ideal. We ended up winning the Scottish Cup that season, which was a 5-1 game. You always remember Gilles Rousset with the ball, and I think it slips under his legs. Gordon Jury got a hat-trick. Laudrup got the 2 of that one. So, but no, the game at the end of the season, kind of that game where Rangers went 1 down, and it was the Paul Gascoigne show when he picked the ball up, obviously. And I mean, everyone's seen it on YouTube, and he scores the first goal, and then obviously he's, as we've mentioned in this pod before, he's blown out his arse, and he was asked, "Look, Paul, give us one more burst," and he burst through the middle of the park. The arms are up, holding everyone up. It just opens up in front of him, just leathers it into the back of the net, and brilliant. I know you were at that game, Carney. I unfortunately wasn't at that game. My dad always worked weekends, so I was always going to midweek games, and my dad's pal had a season ticket in the club deck. In fact, quite close to where I am now at the moment. And I used to go with him to a lot of games, but I wasn't at that one. But I remember watching it and thinking, what a man Gascoigne is, what a player he is. And then obviously we got the penalty near the end, and they gave it to Gascoigne, and he slipped it away to make it 3-1. But to me, 8 in a row, and it set us up for the 9. It was memorable, and it just showed you how important that signing Walter Smith made and Paul Gascoigne was, because he won us that 8 in a row.
100%. I think the list of the signings that you said at the start, mate, showed you the good signings that Walter would get and the awful signings that Walter would do as well. You were like, what the fuck? I think we signed Derek McInnes for Greenock Morton, is that right?
Yeah.
Greenock Morton. I remember meeting Derek McInnes. I used to stay in Weems Bay, and I remember meeting him in the Weems Bay Hotel. It's no longer there anymore. It's amazing when you start thinking about all the times and how many memories and that it kind of flashes back to you. But that top is my favourite ever top, and I refuse to have I refuse to budge on that one. That is and I think it was probably because that's either my first or my second top that I ever got. And in the back of that one, I had Laudrup. I had 11 Laudrup. And on the away one that we had, remember the red and white check? It was like a checkboard one. On the back of that, it was Gaza I had on that one. But as well, I think it showed Walter Smith's perseverance with Gascoigne in times like this, where he was just like, I'm going to leave him on, because he was blowing out his arse. Most of the time he played for Rangers, he was blowing out his arse, to be completely honest. But Walter Smith knew that if I leave him on, he will do something. And that game will live with me forever. I was, as I say, I was there. I seen it. I was sitting in the Broomloan front that day, and I remember seeing Gascoigne run the length of that park with that ball, and I was right behind him as he hit the ball and called into the net. And yeah, I'll never forget it. Scotia, anything to add on Ali's choice?
No, I'd kind of be repeating what Ali said. That season always stands out for me for how good actually Gordon Jury was. You know,
he was the
he's
top.
not
He was the
discussed enough.
top. Sorry, Scotia, I was just about to butt in there. He was actually top goal scorer that season. Gordon Jury.
Yeah, I mean that game against Hearts, the 5-1 game, Jury was absolutely magnificent in that game, and I think a lot of the credit gets given to Laudrup, which no complaints from me why that would be, but I think Jury in that season was maybe a wee bit underrated. And you know, you watch the season back, you go through the games, and he was actually a really important player that season. Yeah, and Ali mentioned some of the transfers coming in. Wee Eric Bo Anderson. I mean, he ended up staying down in Helensburgh as well, and me and a couple of my pals were playing sort of football at the local park, just kicking the ball about between ourselves. And him and his missus were walking their dog in Kimpai, and he sat with us and played football for like 5-10 minutes, which was really good. Yeah, it was a really good season. It was one of the seasons, like I'd mentioned, that I remember more than the 92-93 season, which, as you mentioned, the top there. Have to say the top in the 92-93 season was absolutely magnificent as well.
It was.
Yes, but yeah, no, Ali summed it up really well, and I would just be repeating points that he's made already.
Yeah, Ryan, your thoughts on 8 in a row?
The number 8. I mean, that's what it means to me. It means Paul Gascoigne. It means 8 in a row. It always will for me. It's a special number, and I think we need to look at what Walter did with Gascoigne, and I think Gascoigne, we all know, has got his troubles, and he was a one-off. You'll never. I've said it in a pod before. Obviously, I'm a Laudrup fanatic, you might say, but I don't think you'll ever see another Paul Gascoigne, and Walter Smith managed him the way I don't know if anybody else would have. There was talk of Gascoigne going to Man United at some point in his career, and I don't think Alex Ferguson would have got what Walter Smith got out of him. They had a special relationship, and even I know there's stories about them having disagreements, and obviously guys are turning up half cut or full cut, whatever you want to say. But they had a special relationship. It was like, I think Walter Smith was a bit of a father figure to Gascoigne, and I think he really got the best out of him, and the pressure started to build up when we got 8 in a row. Obviously 9 was everything to us, but you could tell with the team it was just starting, and Gaz was a great signing, a masterstroke from Walter Smith.
Absolutely. Absolutely great choice. Right, Ryan, we'll move on to your choice, and this is what Ryan has picked.
End their home effort with at least a draw. It's too late now. The moment belongs to Rangers. Walter Smith, Archie Knox and Paul Gascoigne in a huddle there. Tommy McLean extends his congratulations, but the season again belongs to Rangers. They've been good champions once again, the 9th time in a row. And Walter Smith took over in April 1991, won the championship that season, has done so every season he's been in charge, and yet, remarkably, we still have 1 or 2 people doubting him. But the celebrations now begin in earnest. United leave the field respectfully. The stage is left to Rangers. The chant around the stadium is 9 in a row. And Walter Smith's reaction right on the final whistle was truly amazing for one so normally so calm. There was the reaction. The man has won the title again. So on the pitch, Richard Gough has joined.
So, yes, Ryan has picked 9 in a row. Obviously, it was leading up to that. Scotia picking 5, Ali picking number 8, and Ryan, you picked number 9. Ryan, why number 9, as if that's not the most obvious question ever?
I'm a wee bit embarrassed. I feel as if you have beaten all the defenders, took the goalkeeper out, and I just need to put it in the back of the net here, type 9. I'm sure we all picked 9. I was expecting a text message back for you saying Ali's picked that, Scotia's, but I've picked that. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting me take this. But I won't go too much into the season overall, because we were great that season. We've done Celtic away, and they all knew what it meant to us as a support, and the pressure was there. You could see it with the players at times. The pressure was there, and I don't think the pressure was on anybody else more than Walter Smith. I love seeing scenes like that. I wish I had £1 for every time I've seen those 9 in a row scenes, but at the end of every trophy we lifted, it's always Smith going round about the players and his staff and grabbing them he's whispering in their ears. I don't know what he's saying, probably something along the lines of, thank you for your work, this is what it means to blah, blah, blah. And the pressure was on him big time, and he said that there's actually like a 10-15 minute video, and anybody watching or listening should go and watch it when they get time. And it's just a 9 in a row kind of highlights, and then Walter Smith interview after it, and he says, how does it feel, Walter? And he says, this was a long time coming. And for him to say that, it obviously was a long time coming for him with the pressure. And he also says, they asked him about the pressure, and he said, I could have been the man who didn't deliver 9 in a row. That's who I would have been. Well, Walter, you were the man who delivered 9 in a row. And it means everything to us, and I'll never, ever forget it. It's an iconic moment seeing Smith going round with Archie Knox and Gascoigne, and it's you said we wouldn't get emotional, but I was emotional watching those scenes. Brilliant.
I'm getting emotional listening to you, mate, to be honest. With Walter, he was always very dignified. He was always not always, he would have the odd moment, or like he would at any time and have a wee burst. We'll come on to that later on, actually, but that one, you could see how much it meant to him. Immediately as soon as the full-time whistle went, he knew what he had done, he knew what he had achieved, and he knew that he was going to be remembered as the guy that got Rangers 9 in a row, mate, and I could not say it any better than the man said it himself. That's everything, that game, to a lot of Rangers fans. I will never ever forget it. Never in my life. I was at Ibrox afterwards for it, and I'll never forget that day. I really won't. Ali, your thoughts on 9 in a row and Brian Laudrup scoring a header as well?
I know. Charlie Miller crossing with his left foot, whatever it was. It was a bit of a weird goal and a bullet header for Brian Laudrup, which you never thought you would see. But yeah, I know Brian sort of summed up pretty well, to be honest. But it's there was pressure on Rangers. I mean, especially the way they'd won the 8th title. Celtic were desperate to stop the winning this 9 in a row to equal their 9 in a row, and there was pressure. And I think it was a lot of relief at the end of that match when they'd finally done it. And you've seen them. I think that clip you showed, if it goes on further, that clip, and they're all in the centre circle, Walter Smith's getting raised up and everything, and you just seen what it meant to him, and the backroom staff of Archie Knox and the best looking guy in Scottish football, Davy Dodds as well. They were all loving it too. So sorry, Davy, if you're listening.
Poor Davy, man.
Poor Davy Dodds.
Brutal, Ali, brutal.
I know, sorry, Davy, but you probably accept that. But but no, it's huge, and as you were growing up, that's what you were aiming for. That's what we craved, and Walter Smith delivered it for us, and forever thankful for him for delivering that for my childhood.
Yeah, Scotia, your final thoughts on 9 in a row, mate. I know it's quite hard. I'll probably stop doing this as much, lads, but these are 3 important titles that I felt that we all should have a say on. So, Scotia, 9 in a row, mate.
Yeah, 9 in a row was absolutely massive. The guys have summed it up well. Like, my kind of memory of it is we were down to the bare bones coming in at the end of the season. I think we actually lost like 4 games between like Easter time or just before Easter time, and we were getting down to the bare bones because this is maybe not so much a Walter Smith signing, but Andy Dibble came in. I know Archie Knox speaks about that, bringing Dibble in, and obviously Haitley was brought back then as well to kind of get us over the line. It's a big, massive season for me because this is the season that I first managed to get to Ibrox to watch a game. I've said previously my dad's an Albion Rovers fan, so there was no way that he was ever going to take me to Ibrox. But he managed to get a couple of tickets for one of the games in Europe that season, and that was the first game that I managed to get to was that season. So that holds an awful lot for me memory wise. Yeah, so the guys have summed up well, but we got what we were all aiming for, and I think you've heard Brian Laudrup come out and say that he feels that we didn't do enough in Europe, whereas I think all of the fans, all the Scottish players, they wanted that 9 in a row title, and we managed to do it that season. Yeah,
it's funny just even seeing players like Alec Cleland in that clip as well. There was Derek McInnes as well, and yeah, players like that kind of played their part, I suppose. But yeah, it doesn't have to take you back, and it's the memories that they'll live with you forever. They really will. So we'll move on. We'll move on to favourite moment of Walter's return, that kind of era. Now, obviously, Walter Smith returned to Rangers. I don't think there was, I think we'll all agree on this, I don't think there was any man in the world of football that would have come back and done what Walter Smith done on his return back to Rangers and Scotia. You summed it up earlier on, mate, that this probably did absolutely cement him as one of the absolute greats of our club for the work that he done when he came back. So, Ryan, I'll come back to you first, mate. What is your favourite moment of Walter's return?
Well, first, I think it's important that I was concerned when Walter came back. I was a bit anxious that he might ruin his legacy a wee bit or damage his legacy, but no, he takes us to a European final, doesn't he? Typical Walter Smith, just has to exceed all expectations and delight me to the maximum. Yeah, took us to Manchester European final, and a thing I'd never thought I would ever see. The scenes. I wasn't in Fiorentina, but I remember exactly where I was. The pub I was in, as if it was like only a couple of weeks ago. I just remember the scenes in the pub when Novo sticks that penalty away, and I think it's McCoy's. He's a good story again in TalkSport, and he said he turned to Walter and said, Walter said to him, "What's the score?" when Novo was just about to hit the penalty. And he's like, "What do you mean? What's the fucking score?" And he's like, well, what happens if Novo scores here? And he goes, "Listen, Gaffer, if Novo scores here, you're going to know exactly what the score is." How delighted must have Walter been and to get to a European final, and especially after, I think that was the only thing, Ali alluded to it earlier, during the 90s, I think Walter Smith played 4-4-2 against Juventus one day, and Borussia Dortmund and Ajax would get some absolute downs, and Grasshopper, Gothenburg. We really didn't do ourselves justice in Europe under Smith at times. But by God, he made up for it. I think he learnt a lot going down to England tactically. I think he learnt what to play with the cards you're given. And obviously some of those games where your arse was doing buttons, you're sewing buttons. Some of the games, but tactically was just so much better in Europe, and to take us to a European final is, I'm pretty sure we'll never ever see that again. And that for me, that was solely down to Walter Smith. I know we mentioned players like McGregor, Queller, Davy Weir. They all played fantastically well for him, and he got the best out of some pretty average players, because Kurt Broadfoot played in that European run, by the way.
And none come more average than Kurt Broadfoot, mate.
I'm sure Christian Daly was kicking a bit as well, by the way. But Walter Smith took us to a European final with a pretty average team, and he'll go down in history for that. And that's my favourite moment. It was I exceeded my expectations, and well done, Walter, once again.
Yeah, superb, mate. Great choice. Again, a moment I don't think any Rangers fan will really forget. Manchester, brace yourself, Rangers are coming. It was incredible, literally incredible. And yeah, we'll probably be very, very, very lucky to see, I would say, any Scottish team reach a European final ever again. So, Scotia, I'll come to you next, mate. What was your favourite moment in Walter's return?
Yeah, my favourite moment has to be winning the League Cup final against St Mirren back in 2010. At this point, he'd given sort of control of the team over to McCoy, as it were, to take charge of games in the cup games. You're playing against St Mirren. When it was that was at the 21st of March back in 2010. It was, and it sticks out for me as a memory because I was actually didn't go to the pub to watch, didn't go to the game to watch it because we were just leaving the flat that I was staying on in Byers Road, and I had to do some painting just to top it up to make sure we got the security deposit back. And in fact, Ali's flatmate was supposed to be helping me out because I was staying with him at the point, and he didn't. So I just had one TV on, and this one TV sitting there and me painting the walls, watching it, and it was an absolutely terrible game as such, really. Stephen Thompson probably could have scored for Dundee United, not Dundee United, sorry, St Mirren in the first half. Alexander makes a couple of good saves. Kevin Thompson then goes in on Stephen Thompson and absolutely annihilates him. Takes him right out of the game. He's sent off. Then Danny Wilson gets sent off after a stupid tackle, which was almost, I don't know if you remember it, but it was one of these ones where it was right on the 18-yard line. So it was one of those ones that potentially could have given us a penalty, but thankfully it wasn't. And then up to, 83, 84 minutes, Naismith makes a burst forward, flings the ball in. This wee pigeon appears out of nowhere, and then Kenny Miller connects with his head and then knocks it away. And it was absolutely brilliant. And then Walter Smith goes absolutely mental at the end, like in celebrations as well. Remember that? It was that was a torturous game to watch, but it was the feeling at the end of it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was superb. I was at that game at Hampden, mate. I remember that game. And rumour has it, mate, that Walter Smith used to own a pigeon farm, mate. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Ali, I'll come to you, mate. What's your favourite moment of Walter's return?
Mine's slightly different. Mine's not an actual game. It's just mine's a moment which kind of sums up Walter Smith as a man, and a lot of managers might have not done what he did. But we brought in, younger folk will know the name, but maybe not know, Paul Le Guen came in, and he came in with a fanfare to Rangers because back then Paul Le Guen was a big name in European football. I mean, he was massive, Paul Le Guen. You're talking in terms of any big manager that's going about into the Premiership, La Liga at the moment. He was tipped to go to major clubs, and it was a major coup for Rangers to get Paul Le Guen. And he came in, and we all thought, oh, he's just going to accelerate us to the next level. And unfortunately, it didn't. He came in with his own philosophies in terms of, and he's just, Scottish football's a different game. You guys know in terms of that. And he did well in Europe, Paul Le Guen. A 3-2 win away at Livorno, I remember. Charlie Adams scored, but it came to an end, and near the end of it, he had a falling out with Barry Ferguson, and binned Barry Ferguson basically. And at that point, he gave the captaincy to Gavin Ray, of all people, who I think Gavin Ray's has actually said in interviews later on down the line, he didn't really want the captaincy then, but he was given it. He was an all right player, Gavin Ray, but he's not a Rangers captain. But obviously, Walter got the call for David Murray to come back, and he was at Scotland's, Scotia's second favourite team, Scotland at the time. And although he did well with Scotland, he said he couldn't resist coming back to Rangers, and he came back. And one of the first things he did was restore Barry Ferguson to that Rangers team. And a lot of managers might not have. They might have looked at that situation in terms of he'd fallen out with the previous manager, maybe went, don't want you in case you're a bad egg. You see that in other teams. And Walter obviously knew Barry's Scottish. He's a Rangers man, and put him right back into that Rangers team and built the team around Barry Ferguson. For me, that was a big moment in terms of probably why he won the 3 titles going on, because he put Barry Ferguson back into that team. And he was a huge player for us, Ferguson, over the next couple of seasons. Yeah, so that's my moment.
Yeah, no, it's spot on, mate. As I say, it wasn't really about games. This is all about moments of Walter Smith, and you are spot on regarding that, mate. I thought Scotia's second favourite team was Italy. No, is that just me? Third, but no, you're spot on, mate. And yeah, I mean, it shows the bravery in Walter, but it also shows the man that Walter is. It basically gave Barry Ferguson another chance, because look, we all know the stories behind Barry Ferguson. Is a podcast on his own. He's one player that kind of splits the support as well. I loved Barry Ferguson. I absolutely adored him because of the age that I was. Now, though, I'm being honest, if I went back, if it happened now, the way Barry Ferguson behaved, I probably wouldn't like him as much. Obviously older and wiser and all that jazz, but yeah, I mean, you're spot on though. It was a massive call for Walter to do that, and it certainly paid off, at least at the start of that anyway. It definitely paid off. So we'll move on now, lads, to a few favourite moment in any European run that we had when Walter was in charge, and all 3 of you picked the same game. So in light of that, Hello everyone and welcome to Mini Club Reaction here on Club at 22 the Rangers podcast. To Leon 0, Rangers 3 from 2007. The starting 11 was McGregor, Hutton, Queller, Weir, Papach and Dami, Beasley, Ferguson, Thompson, McCulloch and Kuzan. Yes, so we'll do a slight club reaction on this if you like. Ali, your thoughts on the starting lineup that night?
That's a decent team, to be fair. I would have probably paid Morelos up top actually instead, but no, only joking. No, I mean, again, I was speaking to Scotia in the pub last night, and he went, "I've picked Leon as well." And I was like, Carney's got to have a curveball here, but I never realised Ryan's actually picked it as well. But I actually had a wee bit of a story in this one because obviously Carney and Scotia know our pal Mahal Fraser. That day, he went on a date with a girl, and I was going, "What do you mean you're going on a date with a girl tonight? Rangers are playing in Europe." And he went, "Oh no, but I can't go any other time." I was like, "Yes, you can." He says, Rangers are playing in Europe. Rangers come first." And I couldn't believe he was going on this date. And I was like, "I can't believe you've done that. I would never do that. I plan everything around Rangers, as everyone knows." And obviously the result happened, and I went, "You've just missed possibly the greatest away result in Rangers history tonight, to go on a date with a girl." And I'll tell you what, he never married her anyway, and he is married now, so that's on him. I can't believe you're doing a Walter Smith podcast and we're talking about Mahal. Yeah,
how did that happen?
It links to the game, but I mean that to me was that. I think that is the greatest result we've had away from home in my lifetime, I would say. To win 3-0, a good Leon team. They had that. Was the boy that hit the free kicks? Was it Diego? Jorginho. He could hit free kicks for fun, that boy. And the result, I'd love to see what we were for 3-0 away in the bookies. That must have been some result. And it set us up lovely in that group as well. We were motoring, and that was the road to Manchester that year, which a lot of folk forget, because you'll come on to what happened when they came to Ibrox, but it's my memory is that one. That's huge, and great goals as well. But I'll let the other guys speak on it.
Yeah, Scotia, you'll be best to pick out who's the big players in that Leon team.
Well, obviously Benzema. He was just hitting the ground running there. He was there. That Anderson was playing. You had Fabio Grosso was playing in defence for them, and who was the boy that played with Arsenal? Is it like Squicciali? Don't know, but he was playing as well. They had a big team, yeah, and they were like one of the favourites for that group. And the game. I mean, the game previously we beat Stuttgart 2-1. And then this one was, it kind of proved to me that we actually could do something in Europe, and I was feeling very confident in Europe that season, because we ended up going on to, I think we played Barcelona at home the next game, and we drew with them 0-0. But this result kind of gave me the confidence that Walter Smith can go out and do this. He can get us places. Perhaps the Champions League group itself finished in a wee bit of disappointment by not finishing second, but as Ali's mentioned, it did lead us on down the road to Manchester, and Ryan summed up that Fiorentina moment very well, because that was one of my, I think that was my favourite moment of Europe, would have been the Fiorentina one, but since Ryan had picked its favourite moment, I'd opted for the Leon game, because this kind of set the foundation. And as well, Kuzan had an absolute brilliant game, and he was getting a wee bit of stick, and I think he'd been getting stick in France as well. And this game kind of it turned around, kind of just stuck two fingers up to all the French media, really, in terms of how well he played. But the goal that I remember the most is wee Marcus Beasley's goal. It was just wonderful, just great counter-attacking play by Rangers, and you were in heaven when that happened. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was a typical Lee McCulloch kind of goal for our first. Kuzan, who was a strange player, Daniel Kuzan, because he was so talented. Honestly, he just could never be asked to do it. He just couldn't be bothered. But when he played well, I mean, because even the goal we scored against Celtic, I mean, it was unbelievable. It really is. He was really some player. And yeah, Beasley's goal, mate. I remember Beasley's goal because it was such a kind of long ball over the top, and he got away at such pace that when he scored, it seemed like it took a lifetime for any player to get up and celebrate with him. He was there for about 5 minutes, just standing in that corner on his own, I think. I'll never forget that night either. It was absolutely incredible, and it probably is the best European away result Rangers I'll probably see in my lifetime, to be honest. I can't see it's really better than that, because that was a really good Leon team, like a very, very good Leon team. Ryan, your thoughts on the game, mate? And who was your man of the match? No, I'm kidding.
Well, if you dip into the archives and look at the podcast that we did before that game, I actually said 3-0 that night. Just also saying about Scotia, I mentioned some of the players. I think it was Hooley was the manager of them at the time, and they also had that boy. Is it Sylvan Govu? I think we got linked with him a few times. Wee striker, and they had that Karlsson as well, who was the Swedish boy. He was a fantastic player. But what a result! It cements what I said earlier on about Walter Smith changing his outlook and his tactics in Europe. He really got it spot on that night, played to our strengths. And I mean, Lyon were beaten. I'm pretty sure they were beating the likes of Real Madrid and stuff at home the year before that in the Champions League. They were a proper outfit, and were fantastic that night. And just as you mentioned, Kuzan reminded me of kind of Balotelli. He was just so unpredictable, but had such talent. He was a fantastic player, Kuzan. But Rangers were great that night, and that's definitely. I think I would agree with Ali. I think that's the best away European performance and result that I've ever seen my Rangers team have, because it put our name out there, and it was I think it was a Tuesday night. Me and my mates were watching it in his house, and it was just in a couple of beers. Obviously during the week we're all working and stuff, and after the game we're like, we need to go out. We need to go out and celebrate. We need to get into town. We're like, it's a Tuesday night, but we've just beat Leon, so fuck it, let's go out and celebrate. We ended up out on. I phoned the ex-wife, and I'm like, listen, we're going out. We've just beat Leon. She's like, what? I'm like, we've just beat Leon. And she's like, all right then. I'm like, so it was, fantastic night. And it just showed that Walter Smith had adjusted his tactics accordingly to Europe.
Yeah, and it was it became a kind of typical Walter Smith team performance in Europe, if that makes sense, from kind of then on, and it kind of set the staple for us to get to Manchester. 3 chances, 3 goals, really, but they were just such a strong Leon side, and it was just one of the nights that you'll never ever forget. And you're spot on, Ryan. I feel like I'm painting the wall again, but his tactical knowledge had changed. He changed how he was going to approach games. He wasn't really stubborn, and he knew what he had to do in order to get the result. And it'll be a night that we will always remember. So we'll jump on this, our second last one, really. We'll go with best and worst player for this. Ryan, I'll come to you first, mate. Who's the best player that Walter Smith signed?
I'd imagine this is a hard one for us all, because he signed so many good players. I mentioned Gascoigne and Laudrup and the rest of them, but for me, pound for pound, the best signing that Walter Smith made was in 1991 for £1 million was Andy Gorham. I thought he was an absolute phenomenon at times, and won 10 trophies with us. The Flying Pig. It was embarrassing, some of the saves he made for us, and even not just that. You always think Andy Gorham against Celtic pulling off wonder saves against them, and penalty save against Van Hooydonk. But what I always remember Andy Gorham for is when we were playing at Ibrox and you were absolutely battering a team like 3-0, 4-0, and they hadn't had a shot the full game, and then in the 89th minute they would create a chance, and Andy Gorham pulled off a world-class save. That's how good Andy Gorham was. He was always switched on for us, and reliable for Walter Smith, and he was the start of a backbone of a very, very successful Rangers team, and that I think is that's the best pound for pound signing I think Walter Smith made. Yeah,
I think Ali's a wee bit shocked that you've picked that, to be honest. I seen his face when you said it, but you'll know why. You'll know why soon enough. I can't disagree with with Andy Gorham, he is the goalie, and he's the goalie for a reason. I will say now, obviously in the present day, what McGregor does is pretty much exactly the same as what Gorham used to have to do. We used to dominate games for the majority of the game, and in that one moment, but you always knew that you had that one moment. And his save against Pierre Van Plonkedonk will live with me forever, because it was one of them saves that I was like, how did he do that? How have you managed to save that? And one of my wee claim to fame is I have beat Andy Gorham at pool. And I've got on video. That was a cracking night. I'll never forget that. That was good. Ali, your thoughts on the goalie?
Well, I actually thought Ryan would pick Laudrup, because I'd picked Andy Gorham as well, and obviously had to change it because now I've known that Ryan picked him.
Who do you think's picked Laudrup? But
you.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. No. But no, Andy Gorham is. I'm the same as Ryan. I just think value for money and what he gave us he was crucial. The points he got Rangers through that 9 in a row season. Then the saves he made against them, I mean, he hurt them. Similar to what McGregor does now to them now, but he was massive, Andy Gorham. And like you say, we've had the pleasure of meeting him. He drank down our pub for a good few weeks, and we got to know him, and he used to call Scotia Dado Purcell, but he used to call him Big Dodo instead, which was quite good. So it's quite funny.
He used to call me Bluto.
Yeah, he called you Pluto as well, which was good. And he liked a wee gin and that. But no, he was good in the pub, to be fair. He would give us time and talk to us about stuff, and he was brand new. But everything Ryan said and Andy Gorham, I agree with it all.
Yeah, Scotia.
Yeah, Andy Gorham was an absolutely brilliant shout. And, you know, that season, I think we signed Robertson and McCall as well. And those are both big, massive players. And Gorham, like the guys say, he helped us win the leagues. And the kind of saves he made, he was one of the best goalkeeper in the world at one point, I would think personally. You know, I know that there was an awful lot of talk about Schmeichel perhaps being better later on in the 90s.
People said Canny was better than, people said
that was maybe later on in the 90s. But I think, you know, obviously the early 90s, like 92, 93, 94, 95, Gorham was right up there. Yeah, absolutely brilliant shout.
Yeah, great shout. I will go next because I just mentioned it. My pick is it's Brian Laudrup. It is the best signing I'll ever see any Rangers manager make ever in my entire life, and I'll not be told otherwise. I just love, apart from what Brian Laudrup means to me in terms of the way I am as a Rangers fan, I wouldn't have had Brian Laudrup if it wasn't for Walter Smith signing him. Brian Laudrup is my hero, and he always will be my hero. He's held in such a high regard to me, and he is. I wanted to be him when I was growing up, but everything I had to do was to be like Brian Laudrup. And I still say anybody that puts on that number 11 jersey has a big shirt to fill, because in my opinion 11 is Brian Laudrup's number. I think Cooper wore it before that. Is that correct? David Cooper wore 11. So, I mean, Cooper, Laudrup, and then Alberts eventually moved to number 11 after wearing 3 for a while. And then at one point, I think I remember seeing David Templeton wearing number 11, and I was going, what the fuck has happened here? No disrespect to David Templeton, but you're nowhere near Brian Laudrup. But I just love when Walter had the conversation with him, and Laudrup admitted that he would rather play at Dingwall on a rainy Tuesday night rather than go anywhere else. And they absolutely loved it. And I think that's also down to the fact that Walter Smith had on players. People wanted to play for Walter Smith. They wanted to continue to work with them. Walter Smith would give them the tools to perform at their absolute best, and he just believed in them, and Walter believed in them, and it's just one of them relationships that you have as a manager. You can't buy that sort of respect. You can't buy that sort of aura that Walter Smith had. And if it wasn't for Walter Smith, I would never have seen Brian Laudrup playing for Rangers. So for that, I will be forever grateful. We've spoken about Laudrup enough, lads. I'm also a wee bit cautious of time. So, Ali, I'll come to you, mate. Who was your greatest ever signing? I know it was Gorham before or Loudrup, but you know what I mean. Who did you go since you got third pick?
Go with another obvious one, to be honest, is Paul Gascoigne. I kind of covered him during 8 in a row, but what a signing he was, and he came with the bleached white hair and the blonde hair, and everyone get that done. And he actually came to view my grandpa's house down just outside Helensburgh. He was maybe looking at buying it, and I made sure I was there. He was there, and he came with the bleached blonde hair, and I got his autograph and stuff. And my mum always says to me this day, he went, "You were more interested in Cheryl at the time because Cheryl was with him, and she had big leather black boots on." My mum was saying, "You were just looking at her all the time." And so that was quite good. Actually, I got to meet Gascoigne, but no, he was brilliant, Gascoigne, and even Walter Smith taking a gamble to sign Gascoigne, and he's told the story when me and Scotia at the speakers event in terms of he doorstepped him and he went out to his villa out in wherever it was at the time, Italy, and rang the buzzer, and Gaza comes down on a quad bike to meet him and tells him to jump in the back of a quad bike, and then he says, instead of going up the track, just back up to the house, Gascoigne takes him in a wild route round up over and up. sits him down and goes, "Right, what do you want?" And he goes, "Right, I want you to come and play for Rangers." And Gascoigne just turned around and went, I'll come and play for you. And that was it. Had a beer with him and said, "I'm away on holiday tomorrow, I'll leave you with Jimmy and the rest of his pals." So he had to stay with them, and he got a flight home. And he went back the next day, and the chairman, Archie Knox, said, "How's you gone?" He went, "I'll sign for us." And they're like, "What do you mean?" He said, "He'll sign for us." That was it. And but no, Gascoigne, brilliant. And we covered him during 8 in a row, Gascoigne, but what he did in that 8 in a row season, I had his troubles, Gascoigne, but Walter knew how to manage him. And I think Gascoigne has talked about Walter before in terms of he lived on his own a lot. Gascoigne had his problems with obviously his partner at the time, Cheryl, and Walter actually took him in at Christmas one time, and he spent Christmas with Walter and the family, which I thought was a good touch for Walter. A lot of managers wouldn't do that, but Walter's seen him and thought, "No, I'm going to look after him." And he would always have an eye on Gascoigne. He knew, because Gascoigne stayed at Cameron House a lot, which isn't far from Walter's house, and he always knew, because he had a shandy one night. Gascoigne, he told us, had a shandy one night, and Walter found out he had a shandy and dropped him for the next game just to keep him a warning. But he always knew. He always had folk looking out for Gascoigne. But in terms of the player, Gascoigne could just turn a game, similar to Loudrup. He just added that extra to that Rangers team, and fantastic player. But you could talk about Gascoigne all night. But brilliant.
Yeah, again, we've got Walter to thank for the fact that we have seen Paul Gascoigne play for Rangers and arguably play some of his best ever football with Rangers, to be honest. Gascoigne's a legend in his own right. He's again, I'm painting the wall again. Ryan said that there will be no other Paul Gascoigne ever again. He is truly one in a million. Scotia, I'll come on to yours. MD, want to guess what position the player that Scotia does? Defender. Scotia.
It's Richard Goff when he brought him back from Kansas City Wizards.
No way.
90s.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's definitely not. I wouldn't let him away with that one.
Yeah, no, it was quite a tough one, because I mean, Walter must have signed close to 100 players over his spells in charge. I don't know the exact number, but an awful lot of players that he's brought in. But yes, defender at heart that I am, I've went for my favourite signing under Walter, and that's David Weir, who obviously Walter comes in to replace Le Guin, notices that we have an issue straight away. We had Svensson and Rodriguez. Papach was occasionally playing at centre back at those times, and those players in and of themselves aren't terrible players, but for whatever reason they just couldn't play for us. So Walter identifies straight away that we need someone in defence. So he brings in Weir along with Big Ugo Egiok as well. Actually, brings him in. Now I'm sure Walter Smith, I might have this wrong. I might have picked it up wrong somewhere, but I'm sure he wanted David Weir to sign for Rangers during the 90s as well. But obviously he left Falkirk and went to Hearts. But eventually Walter Smith actually took him to Everton when he went down there. I think that was one of his first signings down in Everton, was actually David Weir as well. So we signed him for a free in 2007, and obviously Davy Weir goes on to stay for 5 seasons, becomes the captain after all the fracas with Ferguson happening. 160 odd appearances for us, and the influence that David Weir has had on players such as Queller, Beguera, Danny Wilson, like these are players that would be nowhere near as good or nowhere fondly thought of by us supports if it wasn't for David Weir. And I know Ryan had mentioned there about pound for pound signing, but I just want to read something that I picked out when Walter Smith was asked about his best signing. He says, I've been asked a few times in interviews to name the player that I felt was my best signing as Rangers manager, but it's a tough question to answer because a lot of the players I brought to Ibrox went on to enjoy a great level of success at the club. If, however, you would ask me the best pound for pound signing, that's slightly easier because it would have to be Davy Weir, who came to us for nothing. We didn't even pay a pound for him. That's just a wee small extract to that, but can't disagree with those words, in my opinion.
You can certainly not disagree with them words. Davy Weir became close to a legend at Rangers for what he done when he came to the club. I mean, none of us really expected that. I think a lot of people were quite shocked with the age that he was, and I think he finished at 41, 42, was he, when he chucked it? So, I mean, that's unbelievable. It really is. And Davy Weir, he was so good. He was brilliant. And you're right. He brought everybody else around him. He just ushered whoever was playing at centre back with him through a game. Spoke to them, told them how to play the game, made them the players that they were. So that is an absolutely cracking shout, Scotia. An absolute cracking shout. But many ups, many downs, and we'll come to the downs now. So Ali, I'm just going to do one word here because we'll finish up with the wild card. So I'm just going to ask you for your worst player, and all you need to do is give me a name, right? So Ali, worst player Walter Smith ever signed?
James Beattie.
Oh God, he was awful. Yes, he was.
0 goals.
Oh, he was. Scotia, worst player?
Andy Webster.
He wasn't great either, no. He didn't play. Did he play at all?
He played like a couple of games, but I think the reason he's my worst signing is because I had high hopes for him, and he completely shat the bed at Rangers and was...
Yeah, not a good signing at all. Ryan, your worst player?
Basil Bolly for me.
Oh, Basil Bolly. There was a lot of hype around Basil Bolly. There was because he was coming from, who did he play for? Somebody you know, Marseille. So yeah, there was hype around Bolly, but no, he didn't really ever reach the heights. Mine is, and probably unfairly, but mine is Van Vossen. I could not for the obvious, I could just never take to Van Vossen. I don't know what it was. There was something about him. I just thought, I cannot stand you at all. Probably my irrational hatred for Brandon Barker as well. It's probably along the same kind of lines as that. I just, something about Van Vossen, no, and I'll never forget him missing that ever. Nobody ever will. You'll never forget that. So that'll do us. We'll move on. Yes, go for it, Score.
Tell you what, Basil Bolly costs more than Brian Laudrup did.
Oh, did he?
2.5, was he? 2.5, something
like that. What? No, Brian Laudrup was a bargain. An absolute bargain. Aye, that's mental, that. So yeah, we'll move on. We'll finish up with our wild card. So this could be anything, really. Each podder pick something else, an interview, celebration, comment, whatever, just something a wee bit different. So, Ali, we'll start with yours, and this is what you have picked.
Sadly, Scotland are not going to be at this World Cup. We'll be winning the next one with you in charge, but this summer, who are you going to support? Tell the truth. Why Brazil?
Because I like Brazil, that's why.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they've got outstanding players. Good to watch.
And you like Brazilians in general, Walter?
I like Brazilians in general,
Right. Okay, we'll pass that on. Right, and seriously though, apart from Brazil, because you're a bit fashionable, a dark horse. Ali, give us a wee word in a minute. Come on, 2 minutes. We'll get to 2 uses. They're excellent together. Right, he's already said he's supporting Brazil at the World Cup. Yeah. Scotland are not there. Who are you supporting?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Why?
The obvious.
Right.
Is that how am I allowed to say that?
What's the obvious?
The obvious would be Schultz and Marvin.
Right, now Walter says he really likes Brazilians. Would you go with that yourself?
I'm a big fan of Brazilian stuff. Am I not enough triple, no?
No, and can you promise us though, because all your fine work that you do in the telly and that, you'll never go down the Hansen route and ever support England?
Oh no. Actually, I want him to do all right up to a point because my job relies on it a wee bit.
Right.
So I don't mind him doing okay, but same as you, I couldn't see him winning all.
Right, and your good pal Ron Atkinson, is he supporting Trinidad and Tobago as well? Right, are you going to the World Cup?
I'll be there. Are you
Right,
going yourself?
no chance. And under this man, will we win it the next time round?
I think we'll certainly get the fight. Promised is the final anyway, so that's something to look forward to.
We're fine. And Walter, if Paul Le Guen did 10 in a row, what sort of face would you have on you?
What sort of French way?
Would you be raging?
Certainly I'll battle with.
No.
I wouldn't be raging. I think that'd be tremendous. Be tremendous for Scottish football.
Right.
Is that what gets you up in it? 2 Motherwell boys in the squad and that's what takes you up.
Exactly, are they? Are we in?
Are we in?
Oh, that is absolutely brilliant. That I'm sitting absolutely ending myself at that. Walter and Ali's interview with Tam Cowan before our Scotland game. It was brilliant. Ali, without stating the obvious, it's an absolute class. It's a class interview. But why this interview? Is it you're fond of Brazilians as well?
I'm a big fan of Brazilians as well. But no, I just thought it summed up the relationship between McCoist and Walter together. And Tam Cowan's actually quite funny, to be fair. And when he asked the question about Brazilians and all, I just thought it was class. The double act, the two of them together, and it's one I always watch on YouTube because I think it's brilliant. Some of the questions they ask about it. Tim said Le Guen's there as well. He's on about Le Guen, but no, for me, always makes me smile, that video, and it's an absolute cracker.
It's a belter. It's the bit where Ali says, "Oh, this man's promised us the final," and Walter's like, "What are you talking about?" Like it's different class, and it shows the it's matter how serious and how dignified Walter could be. He was a character and a half, Walter Smith. There's no doubt about it. And him and Ali were always really good together. But it's brilliant. It really is. It's even when he's Trinidad and Tobago, for the obvious reasons, Walter's like, what's the obvious reason? What are you talking about? No, an absolute brilliant choice. So I'll go next with my one. This is mine.
There's another break on here. Can Rangers really wrap it up? It's Eric Bo Anderson again. A sensational appearance from the substitute. And no wonder Walter Smith embroiled himself in the celebration. He has taken the game totally away from Celtic.
So that was mine. I can't believe we actually started this podcast and when he's mentioned Eric Bo Anderson, I was like, I can't believe he's going to get a mention twice in this podcast. Mine isn't the Bo Anderson goal. It's not even the choice of bringing Bo Anderson on the park to win that game, which he did. Bo Anderson did win that game. It was Walter's celebration for that goal, and it's the first time, I was obviously still quite young, it was the first time that I realised that Walter Smith loved Rangers just as much as I loved Rangers because his celebration. He did what I was doing. We did what everybody else was doing. Every other Rangers fan was doing. He was celebrating that. Obviously, he was probably praising himself for having a wee bit of a masterstroke with bringing on Eric Bo, yes, but that was the moment that I mentioned it earlier. Sometimes he would break his dignified persona and his respectful persona, and the emotion would take over him. And it was the first time, as I say, that I remember seeing him and going, "Oh, you love this club as much as I love this club." So I'll never forget that celebration. Every time with the way he punches as he runs out, I'm like, that's Walter Smith for me. Absolutely tremendous, really, really is. Ryan, I'll come to yours, mate, before we finish up with Scotia's. What was your wild card?
The wild card is the 1996 League Cup final against Hearts. We were up. I might get the order of this wrong, so apologies. I think we were up 2-0, and then we kind of fell off the face of the earth, and Hearts come back into it. And Gascoigne's he's not having the best game, and him and McCoy's they've tried to play a couple of 1-2s, and McCoy's running away from him, looking for the ball at his feet, and there's a couple of miscommunications between the two of them. So eventually, McCoy's gone up to Gascoigne and said, "Don't make an ass of me in front of 60,000 folk. I've asked for the ball in behind and you're playing it to my feet, such and such." And Gascoigne's gave him it back, and McCoy's went, "Don't fucking do that again. Like, I'm telling you, you'll pay for it." He's like, "Mom, we'll sort it out then. We'll sort it out in the dressing room." And the two of them I think McCoy's team, had his hand in Gaz's neck. So they went into the dressing room and they're arguing, and all the players are arguing with each other. But McCoy's team, Gaz are going at it, just about to get the fists out. He said McCoy looks at Walter Smith as he walks in the dressing room and he goes, "Oh, nah, I know when to shut up," and everybody else just shuts up, and Gaz is still giving it plenty. He's like, "I'm going to fucking have you," and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh, Walter Smith's going to go off his head with you here." He's like, "Right, shut up, Gaza." He's like, "Nah, shut up, fucking nothing. He's a fucking..." Walter Smith just grabs him, pins him up against the dressing room, up against the pins, and just goes, "Shut the fuck up." And Gaza's face just, the colour goes to Gaza's face, sends him to the director's box, has a whiskey in the director's box, and then goes out and scores 2 goals and wins the cup final. I mean, if that's not man management, I don't know what is. And that again touches on the special relationship. He knew how to manage Gaza. He knew how to get the best out of him, even in that kind of situation. Gaza's up to high dough. How do you calm him down? How do you get yourself a whiskey? 2 goals, cup final, another cup for Walter Smith. Absolutely superb.
Yeah, if that doesn't illustrate the respect that he commanded from players when he was talking and when he was telling them what to do, and I don't know what will, mate. And you're right, his man management was second to none. It really was, and he managed to get, even not, he obviously had very talented players, but he got the best out of some players that we didn't even think would be able to make it as Rangers players. So again, you're spot on, mate. It's a cracking choice. And Scotia, we'll finish up with yours, mate. I've got a wee clip of yours, mate, so I'll play it first and then we can talk about it.
Walter Smith takes a bow at Ibrox. Got the opportunity to come back and he just couldn't resist it. His club, his people. It's a good offer from somewhere. He might yet be back as a manager. It won't be here. An emotional farewell to Ibrox for Walter Smith. Let's hear from the man himself. He's with Peter Martin.
Walter, how are you feeling? Oh, doing 1-1 when I'm on there.
He's not quite ready yet. That's it, the last walk down that tunnel.
Again, Scotia, it's probably a moment that will live with a lot of Rangers fans for a long time. Was Walter Smith's last ever home game in charge of the team. Again, without asking the ridiculous question, mate, why have you picked this as your wild card?
It always stands out for me, and I think it's going to stand out for me forever. It's going to be a memory I have forever. I couldn't honestly tell you much about the game other than Jelavic and Lafferty scoring early on in the first half. I can't really remember the game. I remember the heavens opening towards the end of the game, and I was sitting beside Ali at that game, and in fact we must have been very, very close to where you sit, Carney, in the club deck, because at this point we didn't have season tickets, so Ali would usually try to buy tickets sort of right down the front of the club deck at the halfway line, so we must have been very, very close to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember, that lap of honour. His grandkids obviously coming on to do it, all the players kind of walking around with them. You know, so I remember it from the game itself, and then obviously I've watched it back umpteen times since then. It's a very bittersweet moment, but you know, you hear even the likes of Andy Walker saying that, you know, the respect that he gives to him, and it was a very touching, moving moment. And you know, you see some people in the stands that are crying and things like that. It was a very, very bittersweet moment, and it's, you know, how often does a manager leave in such a high like that? It doesn't really happen. I mean, I've said previously that usually when a manager leaves, it's because the results haven't been good enough. Both times that Walter's left, right, yeah, the 10 in a row season didn't end up great, but he'd already said that he was leaving, and we'd done well up to a point that season. But that season as well, the game we played under United, we were doing well. We were going on, looking as if we were going on to win the league, which we eventually did against Kelly the following weekend. Managers don't leave like that too often, so it's always going to hold a very, very special place in my heart.
Mine too. I'll never forget it, mate, to be completely honest. And I even loved, don't often give Sky commentators a bit of credit, but it was his club, his people, and he couldn't be any more kind of spot on with that, to be completely honest. And even right at the start when they first come on the pitch, obviously I couldn't play the full clip, would be here all night if I was sitting just playing clips. But when they first come on, Davy Weir walks up to him as if they're not going to do a kind of walk around the park, and Walter just says something in his ear just quickly, and Davy Weir immediately is like that. All the players moves them all on. He grabs his kids and everything, and he still had that stature and that respect. So yeah, a great way to finish this up. I'll say a wee bit at the end, lads. So Ali, thank you very much for coming and doing this pod, mate. I hope we've done him a wee bit of justice.
No problem. I think that's the longest pod we've ever done. But
Probably.
if one man deserves the longest ever pod we've ever done, it's Walter Smith. So no, it was a pleasure. Cheers, guys.
Yeah, Scotia, thank you very much, mate.
Yeah, no, that was really good. Nice to hear all the memories and other people's thoughts as well. Yeah, and like I say, I think for me now, Walter Smith sits at the top of the pantheon of Rangers greats.
100%. Ryan, your final thoughts, mate?
Really enjoyed that. I knew I would anyway, but it's brilliant hearing everybody's stories, and it brings the memories back, and the fame they deserved it. It's Walter Smith, and I just like to look at Walter Smith now as I'm glad that we had him, and I'm glad that I lived through his era. He was something else, the greatest for me.
Absolutely. So we've not even discussed these many cup wins. His last title, really, 54, and we didn't even really touch on the famous Chick Young interview when he wanted to make Chick Young retire. We could do a million pods on Walter Smith, but we would still not do the man justice due to the stature of the man. We wanted to do something a little different and discuss moments that were important to us, and I'm sure this will not be the last time that we dedicate a show to Walter Smith. We again pass on our best to his family. Hope the tributes that have flooded in for Walter makes them proud. We thank them again for allowing the manager to make one more trip to the stadium and for allowing us to say goodbye to the legend, to a legend that has such an impact on every one of our lives. I thank the guys for joining me. I thank you all for listening, but most of all, I thank Sir Walter for everything he has done for us and for the memories that will never fade. Your legend will live forever. Walter Smith's Blue and White Army.